The following episode of the Goal Podcast was recorded just days before the House Bill 4885 was released to the floor of the House and Senate for their respective votes. As you've heard in the special release from a little while ago, Goal and us at the Goal Podcast are working on a deeper dive into the minutiae of 4885 and all its implications. In the meanwhile, please enjoy this episode and stay tuned for future episodes for further information. Welcome to the Goal Podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
Jeff, across the table. Garrett.
What's up, man?
How's it going?
Summer is going. We're getting into, it's going to be August before too much longer. And then September, and then hunting season.
Goose season starts in September, so there's going to be...
There you go. All right, so there you go. We can murk some birds.
Those illegal Canadian immigrant birds.
That's right. Take some of them out. Piece of local news. Massachusetts pistol shooter Ada Corkin representing USA at Paris 2024. So this 19-year-old Brookline native, she has qualified and she's going to be representing Team USA in women's sport pistol at the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris.
Yeah, how
Pretty
awesome
cool.
is that?
That's fantastic. Good for her.
Being 19 and like, I'm going to Paris.
I'm going to the Olympics.
To be an Olympian.
That's right. That's right. It's very, very awesome.
Especially and local and in something that involves shooting.
And from Brookline, no less. So, according to her bio, Ada was introduced to shooting by her father at age 9, like many of us were. She joined the Massachusetts Rifle Association junior pistol team, and she started sport pistol discipline at age 12.
Number of competition wins under the belt, including ISSF World Championships, USA Shooting National Junior Olympic Championships, Cat Games Sport Pistol Team wins. So she's currently shooting
quite the pedigree
for Ohio State University pistol team, and this will be her first Olympics.
Good for her.
So for the people out there with kids, you know, you can get them into the shooting sports.
This stuff really happens.
And there's hay to be made. There are college scholarships and there are Olympic
at Mansfield, we have sent more than one junior marksmanship shooter to, you know, well, I don't want to say that we have, but we, you know, pointed them in the right direction, and through their own hard work and discipline, they earned themselves free rides to college for their shooting skills.
Yep. And there were some great news articles. You know, this young lady for being as young as she is, and with all the excitement, I'm sure that's going on, seems to be, you know, very well spoken, talks very well about the discipline of shooting and being safe and all the great things that it's done for her. And, you know, and it seems to be doing for a long term.
She's definitely a better shot than me. I couldn't do that offhand stuff at the distances that they do and the
and the accuracy is insane.
They measure points by tenths, man. I can't. I like argue. Hey, it broke the line if it's a 30 cal. I get the points for that. But no, good for her. Good for the rest of the team. The Olympics will be next month, so I imagine that we'll talk a little bit more about the shooting sports that are done in the Olympics as we go along. But that's really cool for her. Excellent. Good to hear. In national news, Louisiana. We talked briefly about it before, but it's finally gone into effect. Louisiana is now the 29th concealed carry or constitutional carry state.
So this started July 4th, 2024. What a great date.
Freedom, man. I can hear the fireworks in the background.
Louisiana, 29th constitutional carry state. Governor Jeff Landry signed a law which permits concealed carry to non-felons. It doesn't magically erase federal law. Permits concealed carry to non-felons over the age of 18 without a permit. Louisiana, long been an open carry state, but all of the states that border Louisiana are already constitutional carry.
I thought that was interesting.
State Democrats took, obviously, issue with the age limit, with Rep. Tammy Phelps saying that 18-year-olds don't have fully developed brains at that age.
But they can vote.
I'm sure she's happy to have them vote for her.
Yes, right. They can vote. They can go fight in wars. They can,
cripple yourselves with life-ending debt.
That's right. They can sign contracts. They can take on debt. They can own property. But no, they can't possibly be developed enough to own a firearm and be responsible for taking care of themselves.
Now, I'm sure this is total coincidence.
Oh, come on, man.
So the city of New Orleans has reclassified a police station as a school in order to create a totally new, massive gun-free zone.
What a cynical, craven, like Mike says, what a cynical approach this is. New Orleans city officials, they previously tried to get the state lawmakers to declare gigantic sections of the French Quarter, right, the big touristy area of New Orleans, as gun-free zones. But the legislature's like, no, we're not having it. So in response to that, New Orleans PD has designated the 8th District Station in the center of the French Quarter as a vocational technical school in order to train adult police recruits. So,
and they're saying that makes it a school.
That makes it a school. Therefore, you have to draw 1,000-foot, radius circle around it. And, coincidentally, that 1,000-foot circle includes the huge sections of Bourbon Street and Royal Streets that they previously wanted to make gun-free zones. What a coincidence.
Imagine that.
What a coincidence. So I'm sure that's going to be fought in court because that's BS. They're going to fight it in court. Who knows if it's going to go anywhere, but that's BS. Come on. I mean,
it's pretty weak.
Yeah. Talk about
they're relying on the National School Zone Safety Act.
The 1990 bill, Safe School Zones Act of 1990 or whatever the hell it was.
Which says if your state doesn't have a required concealed carry permit scheme, then there is a de facto gun-free zone 1,000 feet
from any school.
From any school.
Yes, exactly.
Or from school property.
Right. And the reason that we are in Massachusetts exempt from that is because
of the permits.
Yeah, if you have a state-issued license, you're good to go. But anyway, good on Louisiana, bad on New Orleans, bad faith baloney. But as of this summer, according to my calculations, 2.44 million square miles of the country is covered by permitless carry. That's about 70% of the total land area. So we're getting there. Massachusetts probably going to be a little further down the list, but good on the free states that are taking on this constitutional carry.
Also, another great piece of news on a bigger level.
Yeah.
8th Circuit Court rules Minnesota's under 21 carry ban was unconstitutional.
Unconstitutional. So I think this was a panel finding.
Yeah, so this was a 3-0 finding. The case was Worth v. Jacobson. The court overturned the ban, finding on July 16th that the ban is facially unconstitutional.
That's their facial argument.
Which means there is no circumstance that can exist where you ban it up for people under 21 that would be constitutionally valid.
Yeah.
So if that's appealed by the state, and I'm sure will be.
Oh, absolutely.
That would have ramifications for other states that have age-restricted carry licenses, including Massachusetts. Yeah. So that's what interests me about the case is that could be one of those things where the 8th Circuit argues one way, the First Circuit argues the other way. Therefore, you're loggerheads, and then maybe the Supreme Court takes it up. Well, yeah, if the districts can't all agree, then I imagine the Supreme Court would have to jump in.
Sounds like a thing for the Supreme Court. I am hopeful that it goes our way because I don't know how confident I am that the 8th Circuit as an entire court is going to find with this. So I guess we'll see.
Who knows? But it's another.
But good for them in the meantime, though.
Pro decision.
Yeah. Good for them in the meantime. We got a few pieces of Suck State news. Bad stuff from unfortunate pieces of stuff.
Well, in the pantheon of firearms violence and the scourge of awful firearms activity,
the kind of things that you use to justify a federal apparatchik saying that there's a public health emergency.
Well, I decided to take maybe a tack of a bit of their strategy. Gun violence erupts at gun give back.
Oh no.
This is going back.
So what happened?
This is going back to the earlier in June.
Yeah.
Gunfire erupted at a gun give back being held in the parking lot of Old Orchard Beach Police Department. The shooter, gun control advocates.
What a shock.
So Maine Gun Safety Coalition, who is pushing just an atrocious amount of legislation, held a gun give back program hosted by as many as 16 participating police departments across Maine. Forfeited guns were registered by the police. Of course, we don't have a firearms registration unless they want them. But they had their serial numbers documented, and they were given to this gun safety organization for destruction by a contracted partner, this Swedish NGO called Humanium Metal.
My God.
Their shtick is, I mean, I went down a lot of internet rabbit holes trying to find out exactly who these people were or are. But from what I can tell, they are a for-profit company that takes firearms, they quote unquote destroy them, but then they essentially take the metal and either sell it for scrap for profit, money going to various radical organizations, but or they'll take the metal and turn it into some gun control art.
Oh my God.
But from their website, they said the only way to permanently remove a weapon from criminal networks is to destroy it. Notice they don't say anything about the criminal network.
Yeah, right. Let's not address the criminal network.
So these alleged specialists in the safe destruction of firearms, they set up a centralized location in the parking lot of Old Orchard PD to start chopping up their product. And they apparently don't know anything about firearm safety because they were just blindly and arbitrarily cutting into firearms.
Wow.
So I think what they were doing was taking a chop saw with a metal blade just to any old section of the firearm.
Beautiful.
Well, someone had turned in a black powder muzzleloader. The firearm had never been checked to see if it was loaded because when they started to cut through it, it discharged and fired a round that thankfully injured no people, but struck 2 unoccupied vehicles in the PD parking lot.
So, oh my God. So nobody got hurt.
Nobody got hurt from what I could find.
So now we can laugh at them.
Other than some
this is ridiculous.
Serious. Well, these are now victims of firearm violence.
Yeah,
of course.
right. This is the firearms trauma right here.
But of course, at that point, the police department stepped in, shut down the event that was happening in their parking lot.
You can't shoot cars in our parking lot.
And they were asked by local journalists if they had performed any background checks, any vetting to determine whether these self-proclaimed experts from Maine Gun Safety Coalition and this Humanium Metal organization had any ability, licensure. I mean, they certainly weren't registered as an FFL.
Expertise.
To accept all of these transfers, which taking in all of these transfers, I think would make them an FFL and they'd be due a visit by the ATF. But the police department said they were not involved in the event organization or destruction of the firearms other than providing their parking lot as the location where it took place.
No. By offering your parking lot, guess what? You were taking part in it. Yeah. They could have gone down to the VFW. The cops offered their parking lot, which means that they were part and parcel of this whole nonsense. They did it voluntarily.
Yeah. So these people who are conducting plenty of firearms transfers completely out of purview of the ATF with no FFL. They also ignored ATF guidelines on how to properly destroy firearms, which you can find in about 10 seconds with a Google search, because quite literally the first bullet point, no pun intended, is to use a torch, not a saw. So these gun safety organizations are effectively engaged in firearms trafficking.
Making short-barreled rifles. They're making sawed-off shotguns. They're...
And not only is it affecting interstate commerce, I think with this Swedish NGO, this is affecting international commerce. But, naturally, they haven't had their door kicked in by any investigative agency in the middle of the night to discuss their gun dealer status. So, despite the fact that it's factually illegal to do what they're doing, yeah.
Well, it never stopped people before, I guess, right? Who needs facts and rationality when you just know what you're doing is the right thing? When you have moral superiority, who needs all the rest of that technical know-how stuff?
But that wasn't the only gun buyback situation that's been in the news, because opposite corner of the country, out in San Antonio, a police officer was caught stealing guns from a gun buyback.
No.
Stealing them.
No.
Now this goes back to 2023. It was late in 2023. It's now finally just all getting wrapped up.
Yeah.
But the San Antonio Police Department holding a gun buyback at the Alamo Dome, offering gift cards to local grocery stores in exchange for surrendered firearms.
Buyback. I hate that freaking term. Anyway.
Apparently, not all of the firearms surrendered that day were removed from the streets.
What?
As it turns out, Officer David Mahula had personal ideas in mind. He was seen by aides of the local district councilman who was hosting the event, transporting and putting multiple firearms in his personal vehicle that was there.
Nice.
Following an internal investigation, now former Officer Mahula admitted asking multiple citizens if he could buy or just simply have their firearms instead of taking them over for surrender per the program. Although he told investigators later there were no takers.
If they had taken it, it would have been totally legal.
But he did admit to investigators that he took 2 long guns and a World War II era pistol and took them home. He says he did it to safeguard them and to separate them, the firearms that he thought had potential for historical significance. Wait a minute. I think these might be valuable. I'm going to take them.
Just for safekeeping. No, I'm not going to totally profit off of their sale later on. This is safekeeping.
He never contacted a bona fide collector. He never contacted a museum. He never contacted anybody associated with any firearms history or whatever. Took them home and put them in a safe for safekeeping.
Safekeeping, yeah.
Now, witnesses interviewed disputed all of these claims, saying that the firearms that he took for himself were different than the ones that were shown in photograph and caught on camera. And 2 officers who were working that event told internal investigators that they were actually questioning him about where that World War II era handgun went.
Oh.
And he responded by placing a finger over his lips and saying, giving them the shh.
Oh.
And giving them, the little wink and the nod to, that they said they interpreted as to keep quiet. Now, amongst all the firearms that he took,
I love this.
He also admitted that he took 9 boxes of ammunition surrendered at the event, and he says it was to, quote, destroy them at a firearms range.
1 round at a time by destroying them, by shooting them into targets.
Now, it's kind of unclear how many firearms he has taken into his personal possession under similar circumstances and whether or not those firearms have been recovered, sold, documented in any way. Now, he's been since placed on indefinite suspension, probably to save him from having to write that he was fired on future job applications. No charges have been filed as of now that I'm aware of.
Yeah, no.
Because apparently stealing firearms and ammunition is okay as long as you're...
It's all good. He's a cop, so...
As long as you're on the internal payroll.
You're on the job. Oh, no way.
Now, part of me, in my heart, says...
I sympathize.
There's a part of me that understands that if someone were to bring a true piece of history to a gun buyback,
brings like a Singer 1911 or something, or switching signals, I'm gonna have a real problem seeing that get cut up.
I could understand the perspective of wanting to preserve a piece of history.
Yeah.
However, didn't ever tell anybody, tried to cover it up.
Yeah. No.
Didn't talk to a historical society, didn't talk to anybody
from it.
And didn't let them know that what they were giving away for probably some $50 grocery store gift card was actually worth a significant piece of money.
Like, why don't you hang on to this and you'll make $4,000 on it next week?
They certainly didn't have anybody at the event that had any knowledge of historical firearms.
Yikes.
Except
this guy,
apparently. That could advise anybody. So no, they're just there and they are perusing the pawn shop shelf and taking what they want. So
lovely.
These are the people that say, "Oh, we're taking these firearms back to keep the streets safe."
Yikes!
Unless we want them.
Another piece out of Wayne County, Michigan. Juvenile court judge. How do you say this? Salenthia
Latoy Miller.
Nice. Okay. Was trying to board a flight from Wayne County Airport bound for New York's LaGuardia. While going through TSA, security spotted a pistol on the X-ray machine's monitor. Okay. All right. On the way to LaGuardia from Michigan. Search of her purse, they found a Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard 380 that was loaded with a round chambered. According to the report filed by Wayne County Airport Authority Police Department, quote, the firearm was not artfully concealed, close quote. Judge Miller Now, all right, this is us versus them now. Judge Miller was issued a misdemeanor ordinance violation for dangerous weapons in order to contact the local district court within 14 days. Via her attorney, Miller claims that the gun was not hers, but belonged to a friend. Per the police report, Ms. Miller said she had not registered the firearm at this time. And Ms. Miller told me her brother lived and purchased the firearm in some redacted location. So
somewhere else.
So this
it's not mine. I'm holding it.
Right, yeah. So this judge gets a slap on the wrist for trying to sneak a
little baby slap.
Yeah, trying to sneak a gun through TSA, which if it was one of us, the black helicopters, the guys with guns, the $14,000 in administrative fines and civil charges and all that stuff, they would be coming down on us like a hammer.
Oh, it would certainly cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Again, this is one of those situations where I'm not upset that she was given the courtesy of this is probably just an honest mistake. I just wish that courtesy was extended to
everybody.
Literally any other member of the general public.
How many times do we tell the story about people getting boned in like New York over honest mistakes? Instead of somebody saying, "Hey, you really screwed up. Don't let this happen again," and sending them on their way, they try to bone them with like federal or with felony charges and try to screw up their entire lives.
Which, truthfully, I think she's actually kind of lucky she got caught in Michigan, because if she landed in New York,
it might have been a different thing. Yeah,
if she landed in New York with that firearm,
it could have been a different situation.
Locked and loaded in her purse, ready for bear. I love their thing, not artfully concealed, which means it's just in there.
Yeah, right.
It's just dumped in there.
She dropped it in her purse.
Yeah, there were some issues about the fact that the firearm wasn't registered. As much as I would love to, go na at gun control people, registrations are stupid.
Yep. Absolutely.
Don't purse carry. It's just a bad idea.
For the love of God, don't do that.
And one of the things that we talk about is don't store, transport, or do anything with firearms in the bag that you use for travel.
Seriously, there's too much of a possibility of cross-contamination between your range bag and your freaking carry-on bag.
And we both personally know people that have had, ammunition stuck down in a pouch that they forgot about.
Yeah.
Empty shell casings that made their way down into a gym bag that someone's now using.
Yes.
So
all that stuff is possible. Just don't do it, man. Range bags are not expensive.
So learn from this judge's mistake and maybe don't make those same mistakes, because chances are you're not going to get that sort of white glove treatment for walking a locked and loaded handgun
into the airport
in your carry-on bag through TSA.
Sig Sauer, this thing is finally resolving.
So for all the people that say you cannot sue a firearms manufacturer,
the Ccse protects liability. Right.
This is proof positive that you absolutely can. They are held responsible for their products like every other manufacturer. What they're not held responsible for is the intentional misuse of their products.
Yeah, same as everybody else.
This particular story stretches all the way back to December of 2018. Guy, his name is Robert Lang. He's in Alpharetta, Georgia. Claimed he was injured by means of a negligent discharge of his Sig Sauer P320 pistol when he says it spontaneously fired without the trigger being pulled. The story is, as Lang told it in his lawsuit, was that after arriving home, he loosened his belt to, essentially disarm himself for the day and just leave the firearm in the holster, take the whole holster off.
Okay.
It was my understanding. And then put the pistol away in a storage location. And I do something very similar. I don't necessarily draw the gun from the holster, unload. But for my carry firearms, that is going to go in the bedside situation.
Yeah.
That's staying loaded inside the holster, inside storage.
Sure. Yeah.
So according to him, he placed his hand onto the holster or onto the grip of the gun, however he was describing it. And prior to removing the holster, firearm, everything from the belt, the firearm discharged. It hit him in the right upper thigh, exited out just above the knee.
God, that had hurt.
Said the bullet actually went through the very tip of the holster, so it went through the holster. The next round was unable to cycle, and the spent casing was damaged because it's all jammed up.
Yeah, it dragged inside the holster probably.
And according to his attorneys, the trajectory of the bullet indicated that the firearm discharged while completely encased in the holster. So he brought a cause of action lawsuit under Georgia law for negligence, strict product liability, breach of warranty, express warranty, implied warranty.
So his argument specifically was that he was handling the entire holster, which implies that the trigger was covered, and therefore
Correct.
he could not have pulled the trigger accidentally.
That's what he's saying.
Okay.
Now, end of June 2024, a federal jury ultimately agreed with his claims and found that Sig Sauer was negligent and liable for that injury. They awarded $1.61 million in past damages, $690,000 in future damages, and about another $51,000 in stipulated medical expenses, totaling the full decision $2.35 million.
Whew. That's a fair chunk of change.
The questions, if you go through their thing, is, did the defendant, which in this case is Sig Sauer, supply a product that was defectively designed at the time the product left the defendant's control because it did not possess a tabbed trigger? They say yes. And they said, was the defendant, Sig Sauer, negligent for selling the P320 without a tabbed trigger? And they said yes. And what they're talking about is, if you've ever seen triggers that have that little finger, that little thing that sticks out that you actually have to physically like pull out of the way to pull the whole trigger back. They're saying that Sig Sauer is liable because the firearm did not have that specific feature.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of room for Sig to challenge that.
Yeah, I think so too. I wasn't aware that was what they were arguing. That was in the jury's decision. Like it says, it has it written, typed out on the decision, did defendant Sig Sauer, yada, yada, yada. And there's like a box for yes to check yes and a box to check no. If the gun is not designed with that feature, then no.
Correct.
Your 1974 Nova didn't come with an airbag. Therefore it's unsafe.
Well, hey, there's a lot of firearms that don't have that particular feature. I mean,
exactly.
Even the Smith & Wesson Shield,
right,
they have that hinge trigger system.
Right, the hinge trigger. The Glock
I personally can't shoot well, but
the Glock has a safe action trigger. It's all
but they're saying the lack of that little tab effectively is I think what they used to justify their ruling, which probably will not stand up on appeal.
I hope not. Yeah. All right. Anyway.
But Sig responded. They said, obviously this is their press release, but they strongly disagreed with the verdict. They'll be appealing the decision on multiple grounds. They said that the plaintiff failed to meet the burden of proof that the P320 was a defective design or negligently designed. He said there's no facts on the record that the discharge was the result of anything other than the plaintiff's own negligence, poor handling, which has been their thing the whole time.
I mean, that's what they say every time this stuff happens. Yeah.
And they said that the defense did not create any other alternative to confirm how that trigger could have been pulled, or how that firearm went off, other than poor individual handling.
Is this the case where the person or the person's lawyers declined to send the gun back to SIG for testing, or was that one of the LE cases?
That was one of the law enforcement cases.
Okay.
But a lot of people have said, hey, we're not sending you. Again, we're not sending the product back to you to test.
I'm not sending you my evidence.
And now, since 2018, SIG has been sued dozens of times by all sorts of individuals, law enforcement departments. But until this case, none had resulted in a finding of liability against SIG, even though the company has settled a couple cases out of court, both involving law enforcement agencies.
So here we are.
It's an interesting situation to watch because, again, it on its face disproves that whole idea that firearms companies are somehow magically immune from
all
lawsuits.
All of the arguments against the PLCAA just go right out the door because...
But of all the lawsuits SIG has faced, this one seems about the flimsiest. To say that because it doesn't have a tabbed trigger, which is...
And now
SIGs just don't have.
And this is the one that sticks,
I can't think of any of their firearms at the top of my head that has a tabbed trigger.
I wonder if they didn't settle because they totally expected that this wasn't going to survive the jury.
I don't know.
Yikes. But anyway.
Yeah, of all of the consistent complaints about the 320 that we've seen over the years, where people have blamed the 320 for going off and it's jostled, hit, struck, whatever. This seemed to be a pretty...
Hammer fired, right? Is that what you say?
Striker and hammer fired. Double action. But it's going to be interesting to see how this actually plays out. But I thought it was an interesting case just to show demonstrably that there is liability for firearms manufacturers if they design a defective product, just like every other manufacturer of every other thing in the country.
If you're guilty of negligence in your, in your design, you can be held responsible for that. So anyway, yeah, interesting. I'm sure they're going to appeal it. Recent news, as more or less of the last episode that we did, but recent news, beginning of July, Alec Baldwin's case, the criminal trial in the shooting on the set of the movie Rust, has been dismissed.
Dismissed with prejudice, which is a huge situation.
He's very happy about it.
I bet he is.
So back on July 12th, all the charges against Alec Baldwin were dismissed with prejudice by Judge Mary Barlow Summer. Because, and this came out of freaking left field, the prosecution was found to have withheld potentially exculpatory evidence. So they had, what did they have? Some ammunition that was brought into the courtroom. What did we find about that?
So there was an individual who was connected with the case, who knew both individuals, who was storing some firearms and storing some ammunition for Thel Reed that was allegedly from the same lot, the same manufacturer. I guess they were custom manufacturing their own ammo and their own blanks.
Thel Reed being the father.
Of Hannah Reed.
Armor. Yeah.
So if I got the story straight, he had contacted law enforcement, said, "Hey, I have all this ammo. It's it's the same ammo that came from this whole situation.
Yeah.
Here."
So they took it.
Connected. Well, they apparently didn't take it. They just got a photo of it, and the leading prosecutor said, "I don't think it looks consistent," and they just ignored it. Then a couple years later,
and importantly, didn't turn it over.
Yeah, a couple years later, the guy physically turns in the ammo and is like, "Take it." They end up taking it in, but instead of putting it under this case, they put it under a different case number. They kind of tucked it on the side. When the prosecution or when the defense for Alec Baldwin went through the discovery process, and they said, "We want to see all the evidence that you have."
Yeah.
They never told them about these other rounds. Oof. Defense ultimately finds out about it and
does the happy dance.
They have the rounds brought in and they show them to the judge, and the judge goes, "These are exactly like the rounds in the Rust case. What do you mean that these aren't?"
Yeah. Wow.
What the hell's going on here? And there was a lot of other things that the defense had griped about, I guess you could say, about how the prosecution was being conducted. So I think this, combined with a long list of other, small things that unto themselves would not have caused a dismissal, when they add it all up together,
adds up to shenanigans.
The judge just said, we can't have this many problems with this case and still call this a fair trial. You cannot fix this.
So withholding, that's the Brady rule, man. That's it. Withholding especially potentially exculpatory evidence from discovery, that is a huge no-no on the state's part. That's to the level where I question whether or not the prosecutor is going to be disciplined, because that's bad juju.
Well, it's certainly a public embarrassment.
It should be. I think the guys, Carrie Morrissey, I think she's got some explaining to do.
Yep. So I'm sure, whoever appoints her or her constituents or the political figures above her will say, what was that all about? But the judge's point was you don't get to just say that, well, I don't think this is related and therefore I don't have to turn it over.
Yeah. It's you turn over everything.
So the judge dismissed the charges with prejudice, which means he's not eligible to be tried again. So it's not like they can say, okay, well, we'll do it differently this time. It's over. Man. It is over.
Over.
Obviously, Baldwin was very happy.
Oh, of course. Yeah. No, he did a statement and he was crying and he was all that, however you feel about his personal liability in the case. I personally, we don't have to rehash all this ground, but he was the producer. He was the guy holding the gun. He certainly has some level of responsibility. Whatever you feel about his personal liability in the matter, I think that dismissing the case was probably the right thing to do because of the process. There's certain The rules are in place like that for a reason.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the cause for the dismissal. It's not because, hey, I really just don't think
the judge is a lefty or, whatever. They're just a big fan of.
It's not sympathy for him as an actor or,
exactly.
They're not saying that, well, we don't think he meant to do it. It's
therefore we're going to find some procedural.
There are legal rules in place designed to protect defendants. The judge concluded that the prosecution broke those rules. It was not a fair trial, and that's the end of it.
That's it. Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that's that's how it shakes out. So,
but interesting conclusion. And I think looking at that trial, it raised a lot of questions of. So who does bear responsibility in a situation like that? When you have even instructor-student, who bears legal responsibility and who has the burdens for what?
Who has
and
moral responsibility, who has
moral, ethical, legal.
Exactly. It raised a lot of really
philosophical questions.
Yes. Yeah, it did. So there you go. Yeah, that came out of total left field for me. I hadn't been, I guess, following it all that closely. I didn't know that was in the offing, and they're like, "What? What the hell?" And I had to go do some reading, but yeah, there it is. It's all over. The Goal Podcast consume section. So, what are we consuming? The last episode we started, and we'll see if we can keep this going.
Yeah,
so,
we discussed podcasts.
Yeah,
and what podcasts to listen to, and for me, I don't listen to a lot of gun podcasts, just because it's there's a lot of the information that I'm reading elsewhere.
And
so instead of listening to the podcast, I'm going to read the guy's news article, and I'm following links to different stories. So,
and you do like to have a life outside of the whole, gun nerd thing. So that's okay. That's okay.
But in the scope of podcasts, I listen that I think are worth listening to. So I start pretty much every morning listening to a podcast called The President's Daily Brief. Mm-hmm. So this is hosted by former intelligence operations officer Mike Baker. He's been on a variety of other podcasts too, so people might recognize the name.
Mm-hmm. Or the voice. He has a very distinctive way of speaking.
Yep, and so the description for the show is each morning the President of the United States gets a classified briefing on the most important issues facing the country, and this is this guy's version of
for general consumption.
Doing that for general consumption, and it's a quick 15, 20 minutes. Quick catch up. He does 2 releases a day, one at 6 in the morning and then one in the afternoon. And then a longer version on the weekends called a situation report, where he will take one of those topics, one of the bigger ones, and he'll dive into the weeds and have other experts come on, and it'll be longer for an hour. But yeah, quick 15, 20 minutes in the morning of here are the top stories in the world. Here's what's going, the latest situation with.
He's had a lot to talk about the last few weeks.
Well, there's a lot with, here's the development on Ukraine and Russia. Russian war.
The international situation plus the domestic situation.
Here's what's going on between Israel and Gaza. Here's where they are. Here's the latest update. Here's who said what, and all the details.
Yeah, and it's presented like it's not some long droning thing that takes a freaking hour to get through. It's like, okay, it's quick bite. You get enough little quick bites in the 15 minutes or whatever it is so that you get a feel for. And if something strikes you, then you sit down and you start reading up on it.
Absolutely. So quick 15, 20 minute grab in the morning. Perfect for the short commute. If you're dropping your kids off or whatever, you can give it a quick listen, and then you're kind of up to speed on the top 2 or 3 things that are going on.
Yeah, right on. Okay. Keeping with the general theme of podcasts, I'm finally caught up with Bound by Oath. So Bound by Oath is the name of the podcast. It's put out by the Institute for Justice, which is a nonprofit law firm that focuses on constitutional law. So they do take a lot of pro bono cases and things, surrounding constitutional law, particularly in the area of property rights. So IJ has argued before the Supreme Court, I think 10 times. in the areas of things like eminent domain, civil asset forfeiture, and interstate commerce, things like that.
The geeky legal stuff.
Right, all the geeky, nerdy legal stuff, right? But the stuff that keeps me interested. So the podcast is like a narrative. It's a narrative podcast. It tells a story, it has interviews and so forth. It focuses on the history of the Constitution, discusses specific cases, touching on whatever the theme of the season is. So there's 3 seasons. Season 1 was a little bit more scattershot. Had topics from like excessive fines, due process, equal protection. Seasons 2 and 3 have focused more on like one topic each, with season 2 looking at infringements by the government on personal rights. And
it's a lot of material there.
There's a lot of material. And then season 3 focused on property rights like eminent domain takings and so forth. Overall, I find it to be a pretty well-produced, well-researched podcast. It's done by one of their lawyers, and I am remiss because I forgot the guy's name, but he does a really good job presenting it. They can be a little bit sporadic in their release, so it's not like every day or every week or whatever. It's like every once in a while, a new episode will drop. They're typically an hour or whatever long. So if you got a long commute or you're working around the house, it's actually really interesting the way it's presented. And if you're a constitutional nerd, into reducing the power of the government over your personal life, and you'll find it interesting. So check it out. It's bound by oath by the Institute for Justice. And we're approaching the end of the month. So you have a drill of the month.
Yeah, this will be the first. Will this be the first podcast in August?
It will.
Yes, it will. So this will be August 2nd. Yeah, so it'll be time to pick up a new drill of the month. So last month was the dot torture drill. Finished cutting the video together. It's been posted online.
Oh, yeah. Yep. It's been online for a little while.
It's worth seeing. You can see, hey, average.
Jeff, you suck. Yeah.
I keep telling people, hey, feel free to go on there and, tell me I'm awful at it. And nobody takes me up on it. So it's
Tell me the whole... terrible.
It's like, if you don't say you don't have a problem with the bill,
then yeah, right.
must be great.
Silence gives consent.
But so for the month of August, I'm doing Ken Hackathorn's wizard drill. So the dot torture drill takes kind of a lot of ammo. It's 50 rounds to run the entire test, and a whole box of ammo can be a lot if you're working through one particular drill. The wizard drill is almost the exact opposite. It's only 5 rounds.
Ooh, I like that.
But
cheap.
This drill is designed, and this is Hackathorn's way of putting it, designed to test your competency with the firearm that you carry.
Mm-hmm.
So
not your race gun, not your competition gun, not your range gun.
Your plinking.
The one that you keep on your body.
Yep. So he feels that this tests the fundamental skills necessary to survive a concealed carry encounter at realistic distances. And he talks about, if you can find videos of it online, but he talks about sometimes people assume they're prepared because they're armed. But his position is that you may be armed, but that doesn't mean you're prepared if you don't have the tangible skills that he feels you need.
You and I talk about that in classes all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's only 5 rounds, but it's 5 rounds of the ammunition you actually carry.
Oh, the pricey stuff.
So yes, it's the pricey stuff, but it's only 5 rounds. So if you want to, you can practice it, I suppose. But you should run it with your actual carry ammo.
Okay. It
is shot with the gun that you actually carry. So if you take the 22 plinker pistol, like we talked about, if you carry a snub-nose revolver, you're shooting this drill with a snub-nose revolver. If you shoot a little micro 380 pocket, mouse gun, that's what you need to shoot this drill with. If you carry a 1911, shoot it with your 1911.
Big sofa.
You're shooting with the gun you carry, and you're concealing the gun in the manner you actually normally carry and conceal that firearm.
Yeah, so, the whole thing here points to your daily setup, right? You're not...
It's your daily setup.
Yeah, so no combat pistol belts, no mag carriers, unless that's your daily thing. You do your daily setup.
Yep, so essentially, get ready to go as you would for the day, except you're going to the range. Now, he does say that if you pocket carry your firearm, so if you're into the pocket carry game, you are allowed to start the drill with your hand in your pocket on the firearm. Otherwise, it is, hands by your sides, like regular, everyday going on.
You got to do the surprise thing.
Your target is an IDPA silhouette.
Yeah.
So that's a target that we've used plenty of times. It has stages at 3, 5, 7, and 10 yards. And the par time for every stage is 2.5 seconds. It's always 2.5 seconds.
Ooh, okay. All right.
So starting at 3 yards.
You can kind of fling it out there and be okay at 3 yards.
Well, at 3 yards, so you're running off a shot timer, but on that beep, you draw from concealment and you fire 1 round to the target head box, strong hand only.
Ooh, okay.
So this is one-handed, right out of the gate, 3 yards, and
cold,
drawing from concealment, one hand headshot in 2.5 seconds.
At 3 yards.
3 yards.
Which is not a long way, but still all this other stuff, you know. Yeah.
Then you back out to 5 yards, beep of the shot timer, draw, fire 1 round to that same head box. You can do it one-handed or you can do it two-handed. So you can you can go
Your
one
choice
hand
at 5 yards.
or you can establish a two-handed grip and press out like you normally would. Again, 2.5 seconds.
Dealer's choice at 5 yards.
At 7 yards, you're doing the same thing again. Drawing from concealment, you're firing 1 round to the head box, this time with 2 hands. So you have a full supported shooting grip.
Now at 7 yards, I mean, it's still not bad, but at 2.5 seconds, at 7 yards, that head box is starting to get a little small.
And again, you're drawing from concealment. So that's getting your concealment garment out of the way, establishing the grip, getting the firearm out of the holster.
Clear draw and fire within 2.5 seconds.
Orienting on target, getting your grip, pressing out, lining up sights, and getting that shot off accurately.
Yeah, that's not nothing.
And then at 10 yards, so you're backed out to 10.
Yep.
It's a draw and fire 2 rounds to that center mass circle, the down zero circle.
Yep.
2 hands.
Okay. So that's more of like an accountability thing.
True, but that's drawing and firing 2 rounds, again, on that 2.5 second par time.
So you got to get all that stuff done. You got to get it on target at 30 feet, and you have to reacquire and send off another one.
2 rounds on target in 2.5 seconds. So how the drill is scored is you can drop 2 points and still pass the drill. Any more than that is you fail. If you miss a headshot, you fail the drill, just period. If you go over the time limit on any of the stages, it's considered a fail. So,
Wow.
Hackathorn's belief is that if you're competent and you practice with your firearm, this is not that difficult of a drill. If you don't practice,
You're gonna find
this will be a very difficult drill.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging.
I ran it. I can tell you it's not as hard as you think, but it's not as easy as you think either. Especially when you're focused on time as a necessary component.
Yeah, that makes it a little different.
And 2.5 seconds isn't some arbitrary time point either. So, Hackathorn doesn't necessarily address this. This is my kind of intuition on it. But, the general theory is that those critical incidents, they talk about the rule of threes, 3 yards.
Yeah, 3 seconds. Yep.
So if you're looking at a general time frame of about 3 seconds, that's a half-second reaction time, and then that remaining 2.5 seconds to employ that firearm.
Yeah.
So I think that's where he's coming up with this 2.5 seconds.
That makes sense. Yeah. So you deduct the reaction time because you know it's coming. So there you go. Keep you honest.
Exactly. So, so the gun you carry, the ammo you carry, and the way you carry it is how you're supposed to shoot this drill. Highly recommended you don't, shoot a bunch of warm-up drills and then...
Right. Well, you're not going to get
the best one.
Yeah, you're not going to get an honest evaluation on this. And all of these drills are like, self-graded tests. You're only cheating yourself.
So that'll be it for August. I'll have to get the video cut together and
we'll get it posted.
We'll get it up there.
Excellent. So that's Ken Hackathorn Wizard Drill.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening in. Be sure to subscribe to the Goal Podcast and check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Goal Podcast MA, on YouTube at The Goal Podcast, or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org and click the Join Renew button at the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or town, or if you have a question for the mailbag, shoot us an email at goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.